aka the Dirty Hippie, and this is the Dirty Hippie Says. Today, we're going to be talking about art. Christina Watts.
Hello,
Hey,
Michael.
hello. This is Christina Watts. Christina is what would you say? The producer, you are the professional artist behind Just Paint It.
Yeah, so I do my own Just Paint It show here on Rogers TV. And of course, I'm out and about in the community doing all kinds of different art stuff. So, yeah.
That's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the importance, like the importance of art. And of course, we won't get too serious. Right?
Yeah, it doesn't, it shouldn't be boring, right? Like,
No.
art should be fun. And I think, like, for people, they want to understand, like, what is in it for them with art, right? Like, why is art so important? Why are people, like, still gunning for art when there's, it gets pushed to the wayside over a lot of other things, but it's so important in society and in your personal life.
There's been several studies, that have shown the value of art when it comes not only creating art, but looking at art,
Mm-hmm.
right? Experiencing art in different forms,
Mm-hmm.
and first of all, you live longer.
Yep.
And your well-being, your level of well-being is just a lot higher.
Yeah.
It's like colorful crack.
Yeah. Well, it is colorful. It's it's a treat for your eyes. They say, it's a color for your soul. It's just, there's so much things. But let's go through maybe a few examples of where this would really be relevant in a person's world. And I can think of no better example than like a super sterile office or, place where it's just really bland and sort of there's no, like, you can really set a tone in an office. It can set an atmosphere in a home, right? So I see people getting calm art for their, peace and tranquility at home. So they might have ocean scenes, they might have like nice calm landscapes, and then there's different months that art can be helpful. So for me, in the dead of winter when everything is super dark and it's really lacking color, to pull out like a really bright painting makes me happy. I don't know what it is, but I know how I feel when I'm doing it and when I'm seeing it.
I think it also I've worked in places where, like you say, sterile offices, and I've always felt more comfortable working in an environment where the employer would let me put my own artwork up in my space.
Yeah.
Or there would be artwork around, Like when I worked at Speedy, there was artwork everywhere.
Yes.
And same with Mills, right? There was artwork everywhere. And not only like I'll look at other people's artwork to get inspired.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
To do my own. First of all, to feel good, because I know what I like, what is your favorite art? Do you have a favorite? Do you have a favorite, or is it mood based, or how does that?
Yeah, I'm a landscape girl.
Are you?
Yeah, big time. I love like nature. I love landscape stuff. So my house, which is interesting, we talk about what kind of art we have in our homes. I have maybe a few pieces of my own art on my own walls, but most of the art on my home is other people's art.
Yeah,
And
same here.
Because it's it's that thing, right, where
Yeah.
you just appreciate other people and you learn from them, and
Yeah, I've got like very few, and I wonder if that's sort of I wonder if that's indicative of every artist, or a common theme. Like, do I have a bunch of my own? I almost see it as being, kind of egotistical if I have my own art but there are pieces of art that I've done that I really like.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's all other people's art hanging on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it has to have a meaning to you too, right? Like, if I'm making a big piece and there's a lot of meaning behind the piece and it's in my home, then that's more special to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I've done a few pieces where there's a lot going on in that piece, and it's just art for me, right? It's not, and so I keep that in my home. But yeah, art is really interesting genre. Of course, in the office and the sterile places, it's always good to keep it in like good taste because it could go.
Yeah,
it
yeah.
can be political, right? And
You know,
want to kind of.
I'll tell you a story. I had a couple of pieces in the window of one of the stores in town, and it was a crucifixion. It was a crucifixion of a man and a crucifixion of a female forms. One was the man was blindfolded and the female form was gagged. And 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 I love it because first of all, I think every artist should do a crucifixion. Right? And somebody came up and said that was the most misogynistic piece of art they had ever seen. And I'm like, well, let's talk about that. Like, what is it, because for me, it was the complete opposite. The message I was trying to get across was how some extremists in organized religion will silence the men or blind the men to what's going on and silence the women from speaking up. Right?
Oh, yeah.
And so,
but then could have been taken the other way.
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but I love it because things like that create a dialogue. If people aren't too worked up about it and they're open to having a conversation.
Yeah, it creates a new awareness of different perspectives. Yeah, and that's huge, right? Because we go about life with our own perspective so much that we often don't think about what another person's perspective might be. And the insights that you can get when you open yourself up to that are just like, they're immeasurable, right? And so art is definitely a segue into some of that open thought process.
Conversation starter.
Yeah, well, why do you make art? Like when you're painting, what do you think it gives you?
Well, it depends. Like, I haven't painted in a long time. So let's say creating. Can we?
Yeah,
can
let's
we
go with
Go
creating.
creating.
Yeah.
So there's two. There's two. My biggest fear as an artist is having what's up here, not being able to get those thoughts out somewhere and express them in some way, whether it's photography, painting, writing, podcasts, videos, those things. So that's a huge fear. So I feel just driven. Why I create is I just feel an inherent need to do it.
Yeah.
And it could be, oh, I'm feeling great today, so I do a piece that maybe reflects that. Mm-hmm. Or I see something that just, like the way the light shines through a leaf, right? So I got to photograph that. See, and and it may turn out to be crap. Right? But I think the act of creating is even more important than the creation itself.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Ooh, I just came up with that.
That was an epiphany. That was a really good epiphany you've had.
Yeah. And I think because it's for me, and I can't speak for all artists. For me, it's healing, it's healthy, mm-hmm. Right? Because I think maybe there would be death by proxy, lots of people if I didn't create.
Death by proxy. Yeah, because you are in that range. You've got to make stuff. You've got to make your videos, and you're doing all these things, right?
Well, why do you create? What is it that?
I remember when I first started painting, and it was just the explosion of watercolors on the paper, and the way it just I couldn't control it. Like when it went into the water on the paper and it blew apart, I was just amazed, right? And it was kind of the first chance of me just letting go, right?
Yeah.
And then from there, you got better at art. You learned all the techniques, and I just found myself having a super stressful day. I would come home and I would paint, and I would just flick the switch, and you would be turned off from work, and you'd be in your paint land, and then you'd be happy and calm, and it was good for the brain. It was just good for just how I felt in general, right? Just de-stressed me. Now I keep painting, because like when I instruct, I see the joy that it brings other people, right? And when they can walk away and they've successfully made something, that brings me joy now, because now I look at them and I remember me back then and being just so happy, right, that I'd made something. I used to come home and I'd show my husband something that was terrible, but it looked like a flower, right? Whereas before, I wouldn't have been able to have done that. So yeah, there's a community in it, in that sense too. I think that's the other thing, right? Is when you go and you meet other people that paint, you all paint differently because your hand strokes are different, the weight on your brush is different, you like a different genre, but you still all look at each other's pieces and you can appreciate them, right?
Yeah.
You can appreciate the work that goes in, you can appreciate, what they're doing, and no matter if, how different you are, the art is still what can bring you together.
I have a bumper sticker on my truck that says, "Artwork is work." And I think there's a misconception amongst the general population that think it's somehow frivolous, or it's like it's not a real job, or it's that gets me. Like it's not a real job. What's your real job? I'm like, well, I create.
Yeah.
And I long for the days when there were patrons of the arts that would, nowadays these billionaires are building rocket ships and they're building, monuments to technology, which is great. But whatever happened to the days where they put that money into like libraries and galleries and, studios and artists?
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get there again. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting how, because, back in the day before the internet, when there was an art show, you went, right? Because, it was, big, and these artists were big names, and you were just in awe of their talent. And then now, with, the internet, social media, I mean, it is work. There are artists that make a living doing their art. They're doing their own admin. They're doing their own marketing, right? And they're having to... It's not just about their art now, it's about the persona that they have to share online, and so they are making a few bucks, but it's not the corporate or entity or it's not like it used to be. Like gallery shows are not what they used to be.
I think that's good and bad, right?
Yeah.
Because it historically, if you look at the art market, there was a great show. I don't know if it's still on Netflix, and it's all about that. It's the business of art, or something. I can't remember what it was called, and it delves into that. Where if you and I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but I've gone into a gallery. I was in Toronto in the Distillery District, and I look at something and I'm going, what? It's just not my taste. It doesn't mean it's good or bad. It's just not something that I would spend $20,000 on, right? And so when the whole gallery setup, I think it's a bit of a, at the risk of getting, I think it's a bit of a, who do you know? What's your pedigree? Whereas the social media has democratized art.
Oh yeah, it's
and
leveled
made it
the playing
available.
field.
Made it available to everyone.
Yeah.
But at the same time, now there is so much white noise. How do you get above that? And is it really important? Is it really important to you for multitudes of people to see your stuff?
It depends on
from a business standpoint.
Yeah. It depends on what you want to do with your art, right? So if you're learning it to do it for yourself because it's a hobby, as soon as you push it into, professional art sales, that's a whole other ball game. And you can't just be an artist anymore. You got to be quite a few other hats to get that done.
You got to be the advertising department and the CEO and the chief financial officer. And
it's and you really have to present yourself well, because I see a lot of people and they just want to just get into a gallery, and the gallery will do all the work for them and they'll be found, right? Well, it's not like that anymore. You don't try to hope that you're going to be discovered. you have to, put yourself out there.
You gotta hustle.
Yeah, well, you have to get into, like, you are what you make yourself, right? So that's really the biggest thing for people doing art if they're getting into the professional level, if they're trying to. Myself, I've done group shows. I've never actually bothered with a gallery. But then I had my own shop and I have my own art up there. And honestly, I don't go out of my way to sell my art. People will message me for it if they see it on somewhere, if they see it on TV, if they see it on my social. And then we'll make arrangements if I feel like selling it. I'm also an art hoarder. So,
Are you?
Oh, yeah. I got all kinds of art in my house.
Oh, an artist here in town, Erin Stagg, will burn her art if she doesn't sell it over a certain amount of time, right? And at first I was mortified, right? But then I thought that's how she does it, right?
Yeah.
Me, I will gesso over
Yeah.
something and I'll repaint, right? I don't keep art. I mean, I keep some pieces, but my favorites, right?
Yeah.
But for the most part, I'll if I'm painting, way it goes.
Yeah, I've done a few things that, like, I love painting, so now I paint smaller. So all my color club stuff is only poster card size pieces of paper. And so I have, like, vintage trunks that I keep those in, and I like going through those from time to time. It's just fun. I also have these panel boards because they're slim. Because it was a lesson I learned early on when I was a terrible artist, and I went and bought big giant canvases, and then a lot of horrible paintings were made, and then they stacked up in the basement, and then my husband was like, you can't destroy our house here. So then I did dispose of those canvases because I wrecked those.
I know.
guys.
I've got a bunch of really big canvases, and I don't want to throw them away because
They're expensive.
I might. Oh, they're hugely expensive. Yeah. So there's another thing, right? Art is not cheap.
No.
So the whole value when we price a piece, I don't believe we'll ever get paid what we think it's worth, right? And we'll never get paid what it's really worth.
Yeah, there is that level of what the materials cost, and then the time that goes into them. So some people will do an extremely detailed painting, and it'll take them a long, long time, right? A painting like this, this took me an hour for TV, right?
Yeah.
And so then I can afford to sell this cheaper because it really didn't, it's in my wheelhouse, right? I'm quicker now. But having said that, the really nice detailed work is well worth the investment. For one, because you can see quality a mile away, even if it ends up someplace you don't want it to, like a thrift store. Your art will be bought and it will continue on.
Yeah.
But also, you can get good prints done, and so that's another way. So you have this really expensive original painting, and then you have prints to sell of that for people that can't afford that original painting. So now, as an artist, you're getting your money for the labor that you put in. Should you find the market that wants your prints and your art, right?
In the end, right?
Yeah.
It's only worth what somebody's going to pay for it.
It's only worth, yes. And then you got to find your people.
How do you feel about commissions?
It depends on what they're asking me for. So I'll do pieces where I know that I'm confident in my abilities to do it. If somebody shows up and they want a portrait of their family in oil, I'm like, that's not me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but I'll find you another artist. I'll suggest a few artists for them. I would say don't take on a commission that you're not comfortable doing. And maybe you don't want to do it for that person, right? That's the other thing. Like, maybe you don't want to work for that person for whatever reason.
There's always those customers.
Sometimes there's those customers.
we're like,
right?
I'm like, I can't do this.
Yeah. But then
Right.
there's some customers that I've had that it was so sentimental to them. Like a painting of a woman's husband fishing who had passed
Yeah,
away.
I remember you were sharing that, and that was quite good, and yeah.
Yeah, so I think those are the paintings I don't post for social.
Yeah.
But that was a piece that was really sentimental, and because my heart was in it for her,
Mm-hmm.
my painting was in it, right? So that was.
It just ups it to another level,
Yeah.
right? When your heart is in it. But is there, I think as a graphic designer, I did lots of stuff where my heart wasn't in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it's any less, right? But it doesn't make it poor art. It just makes it different art, because the stuff that I do where I'm like excited to do and I'm excited about it, that you can tell that's just a notch or two above what I would do as just like mass market stuff, right?
Yeah.
I hate to say that, but it's the reality, right?
It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think for a person that's looking for a commission, they need to find that artist whose heart it matches up with, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's I think not a lot of people understand that part of it. Yeah.
I was thinking about this piece that I saw I was staying at an Airbnb in Nanaimo recently, and I saw this had never happened to me before, and I saw a piece that almost brought tears to my eyes, and I had to find out. So it was a it was a surreal piece of dancers. So I mean, you could look at it and you could say, "Oh, it's this," or "Oh, it's that." It was landscape. It was a triptych, so it was 3 pieces together, and it was like dancers dancing across the sea with the mountains in the background, but very surreal, abstract kind of way. And I just was mesmerized by this piece, so much so that I got a hold of the owner of the Airbnb. I'm like, where did you get this? I need to know who's the artist. That was the first time I had ever experienced that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know have you ever had that where I was so taken with a piece that I had to find out more about
Oh,
it.
absolutely. Yeah. I have a painting in my house, and it's done by a watercolor artist, and it's almost like the ancient forest, where it's like a big giant tree and the trickle of the creek, but inside of it is like this little kind of village of little people with like a little Ferris wheel. It's just really interesting. It's like a little city meshed into the forest. It's very whimsical in this area, but the rest of the painting is all very like ancient forest look, right?
Mm-hmm,
and I don't know what it is about this piece. I think it's that it leans into this kind of this funness for me, right? That little quirk that's in the painting. Yeah. But also it's sort of, for me, it's kind of like, here we are, this civilization on the planet. We're very little in this big space, and that painting kind of reflected that.
Mm-hmm. I was looking at your hands. I don't want the viewers to think you're a dirty artist.
I am. I really am. Yeah.
Well, I like what you said in your show. If you're not getting paint on your hand, never trust a mechanic with clean hands. Never trust an artist with clean hands.
Yeah.
Or you like paint under the fingernails, or on the pants, or on the.
I don't get my nails done. Like, it's not something worth doing for me.
Yeah.
But like the paint, it's just, again, it's a part of the feeling of it. Like, and then your fingers are right there. You got 10 of them.
Yeah.
And you could just move the paint with those on a.
I always, and I'm going to be a little bit of a troll here. I'm just stunned by some of the Instagram reels I see where it's like the little black dress and the high heels and painting.
Oh yeah,
right?
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
like, oh come on, that's not the right. That's not the deal. That's not how. But maybe, I don't know. Do you think?
Well, I think
I couldn't wear high heels and a little black dress and paint.
you
right?
should. Maybe that would work for you.
Maybe.
I don't know. Like, it wouldn't be me to do that either. But at the same token, if that works for them, why
Yeah.
not, right? And there is still that value of, was it sex sells?
I guess so, right?
So I mean, yeah. So there is that. Yeah, it's interesting how I've seen a lot of people on social media, on Reels, sell their art in different ways, guys and girls. There is that thing, where they kind of hold their painting backwards and then they turn it around to reveal it.
Yeah,
That is,
yeah.
there's like so many of those, right?
Well, once something takes off,
Yeah.
right? Jump on the bandwagon. And sure, if it's an advertising method that works, why not?
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, sure.
And that's what goes back to what we were talking about earlier about the business, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know? So I'm getting this signal from this technical director dude in the back there who's telling me there's only 2 minutes. God. What's next for Christina?
Well, as you know, I started losing some of my vision, so I don't have my left eye really. I have peripheral. And then we're still waiting on figuring out what the right eye is coming down to. But, you know, even though I'm losing my vision, I'm finding ways around it. And as you can see today, I still was able to crank out a painting.
Beautiful, by the way.
And I just have to understand that there's contrast and stuff. So for those of people out there, I would say, you know, if you're running into issues with your hands shaking, if you're running into visual issues, you can still do art. So I would say I'm going to keep going doing art, and I hope you do too. I think you will.
Thanks. Thanks for the viewers, and also I want to thank Lisa Denluck from Beat Niche Records for making these beautiful Dirty Hippie mugs. And yeah, keep creating. If you create, if you don't create, I believe that everybody is intuitively, inherently creative. And whether you knit or bake or paint or do photography, video, podcasts, whatever, keep on creating. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
Have an artful day.